Hello everyone, Genki here. Today, we're going to see if I can beat Tears of the Kingdom with only magic. To use magic in Tears of the Kingdom, you need to fuse a gemstone to a weapon. This will cause either a fireball, a burst of cold air, or a ball of electricity to shoot from the weapon with each swing. I will also be using the energy ring attack from the Master Sword, since this gives us a weapon where we don't have to worry about durability. I am not going to reset every time I accidentally bonk someone with a weapon, but I will reset if I do a melee attack with the Master Sword or a non-gemstone weapon. With all that explained, let's begin. To start the challenge, we first need the fuse power. However, this shrine also includes our first combat encounter. I decided to leave the shrine and make my way into the nearby cave. This cave has an ore that will drop gemstones. We only got one ruby, but thanks to the foliage on the ground, the fireball was enough to take out the construct. We had to combine the ruby with a stick, so our durability was not high. Thankfully, we were able to complete all the shrines on the Great Sky Islands and make our way down to Hyrule. Our first task was to hit up Lookout Landing. Outside Lookout Landing, I tested our ruby stick on a bokoblin, and it was a 3 KO. That makes me nervous. We then made our way to Rito Village. We weren't going to start the main quest there just yet. What I really wanted was to start the News Reporter quest, since it's required to unlock the Great Fairies. We then went back to Lookout Landing to make our way to Death Mountain. We will need a lot of gemstones for this challenge, so no better place than Death Mountain. Oh, and by the way, I've been doing every shrine I could see, putting the shrine blessings all in the stamina. Traversing Hyrule with only 4 hearts might be an issue, but we need 2 full stamina wheels to get the Master Sword. On Death Mountain, we discovered gemstone cellars, but they were of course very expensive. Away from town in the mine, I was not finding many of the ores that guarantee a gemstone. I only managed to get 1 ruby. Thankfully, we did find a topaz in a shrine, so we had multiple means of attacking. The mine was also next to a Wizrobe. We'll keep that in mind for later. 2 weapons was not going to be enough to fight a boss, so I first wanted to get the Master Sword. That meant wandering around Hyrule just to find shrines. This allowed us to mark areas like Farron Woods, but I also discovered this minigame, which gave us the glider set. I only did the first one to get the chest piece. Once we had enough stamina, we went around to find the light dragon. She was flying above Tabantha, but that was where we discovered something horrifying. She was too high up in the air to reach using the Skyview towers. I looked her up a line, and the light dragon will only come down once we either heal the Deku Tree or find all the geoglyphs. I don't feel like finding Gloom Hands, so that means we're off to find the geoglyphs. At the first geoglyph, I did activate Impa's quest, so I could find the map to all the geoglyphs, but we didn't talk to her anymore after that. I decided to first go through Heber Mountain. We didn't have the Snowpool armor, so I had to keep our ruby sword equipped. We then went to Death Mountain. We did have some issues finding the Purpag geoglyph, because the maps online suck. Next we went down the Central Hyrule, and then the Gerudo Canyons. We then made our way to the beaches below Farron Woods. Finally, we made our way up to Zora's Domain in the Akala region to find our final geoglyphs. This activated a new Dragon's Tier location, which in turn caused the Light Dragon to lower her altitude. We could finally get the Master Sword and begin the run. The first thing I did was rescue Hestu, but of course it decided to rain, so our Ruby Sword was not doing anything. Thankfully the trees went down to the Master Sword. I was not going to deliberately search for Koroks, but I'll get them if I see them. I then activated our first Great Fairy. I wanted to upgrade our Hylian armor. For the main story, I decided to help out Rito Village first. While progressing up the mountain, I decided to test out Attack Up food, and it had no effect. I'm disappointed, but I expected it. Once we found Tulin, we had to battle some bokoblins. We used the Sapphire Sword to free some of them first, before then bombarding them with our Ruby Sword. Winning this battle allowed us to progress up the Sky Island structures and make our way to the Stormwind Arc, where we find our first boss, Kogera. I wanted to see if I could land on Kogera in order to attack its weak points. What I discovered though is that you cannot land on the ice. Link will just crash right through it. I am technically not using another weapon. Now, I know what you're thinking. Link's foot is not magic. Well, here's the thing. The fireballs from our ruby sword do no damage. Also, the Master Sword's energy attack does nothing. So yeah, Gimmick Boss is Gimmick Boss. With this, we get Tulin's Vow, and as far as I am concerned, the vows still count as magic, so they're viable for the run. Next up is Death Mountain. This time on our walk around the mine, I discovered where the gemstones are. Sadly, I had to sell them to get the 700 rupees for the Flamebreaker armor. Rip-off artist. We needed the armor in order to enter Unoboko headquarters, where we had to battle Unobo. For this battle, we had to dodge Unobo's charges and let him hit the wall. This caused him to become dizzy and let us hit him with the Master Sword. We did this a total of 3 times. With Unobo's help, we could traverse up Death Mountain and into our next mini-boss, Morigia. For once, I did not absolutely suck flying the conveniently placed glider. This opened up a hole into the depths, and funny enough, this was our first trip into the depths. We were given the parts for a cart to go to the fire temple, but of course, me being me, I got stuck, and we had to run to the temple on foot. Time for our next boss, Marble Goma. Using Unobo's power, we needed to destroy Goma's legs. However, we then came across an issue with getting the magic to hit. By standing too close, the rocks surrounding Goma's eye caused our magic to bounce off. We had to stay a small distance and use lock-on to fire our magic at Goma. Our magic was only doing slivers per hit, but thankfully we had Tulin's assistance. By the way, is there any way for Unobo to do damage to Goma, or is his purpose solely to destroy our legs? Oh, and I don't know if you noticed, but we only have 5 hearts. To counter this, I made up defensive food. We started the battle using a topaz sword, since that worked the best with lock-on. When that broke, we switched to a sapphire sword, and you can see why I said topaz was better. I switched over to the Master Sword, and yeah, the damage was way better. We just needed to stay at full health, which was easier said than done because Goma loved body slamming us. The Master Sword got Goma to almost half health before running out of energy. We then, in the middle of battle, fused together another topaz sword. 2 swings brought us into phase 2. Goma now hung from the ceiling, and would trap us in rocks. This phase only needed 1 leg to be destroyed, but aiming Unobo was hard. Our current topaz sword lasted until Goma was at a quarter. We then had to make a ruby sword, but for this one to work, we had to get up close, since the fireballs bounced. It didn't last very long since we used a rusty broadsword. However, the Master Sword had finally restored its power, giving us the opportunity to finish off Goma. This battle took 28 minutes. With our damage against bosses being so low, I decided we need more firepower. In Tears of the Kingdom, there are 3 special weapons that are designed specifically to be used for magic attacks. The Magic Rod, the Magic Scepter, and the Magic Staff. The Magic Rods are commonly used by Wizrobes. The other 2 are rare finds. In the Gerudo Highlands, we found an easy Ice Wizrobe spawn. In Faron Woods, we found a Lightning Wizrobe close to a shrine. On the Sky Island, we found a chest with a Magic Rod. Along our travels, I discovered the bargainer statues could sell magic rods, so I made my way into the depths. I had to pay the statue on the surface in order to find a statue in the depths, but thankfully it was an easy spot to get to. What I'm not thankful for is that a magic rod cost 100 Poes. With a decent arsenal for now, we headed to Zor's domain. The island with the magic rod had ancient arowana, so we had no problems getting our Zor armor from Yona. We needed to do a bunch of running around Zor's domain, talking to Sidon, getting Kingdorf and Scales, and activating a portal in the Reservoir Lake. However, before we could investigate the portal, we had a mini-boss fight. The Sludge Lake is a lake covered in sludge. Sidon's ability does no damage, so it's perfectly fine for this fight. Technically, an opal weapon can get rid of the sludge, but I didn't want to use a bow weapon. I primarily stuck with the topaz weapon. It was doing decent damage. We could only get the like stunned maybe once or twice to the point where Sidon would attack it. Thankfully, we didn't need to rely on Sidon, because our single topaz rod managed to take the like to a quarter before breaking. We then finished it off with a Master Sword. With Sidon now by our side, we could make our way to the Water Temple and face the source of the sludge, the Moktora. We were getting our butts whooped, though that was just because I was fighting with the unupgraded Zor armor. Our Hylian armor and defense food made the fight more manageable. The Moktorok's attacks still did a lot of damage though. We started the battle by using the Master Sword. It had the longest range of all of our weapons. 2 hits caused the Muktarok to trip over and let Sidon and Yunobo get some hits in. I also switched to the Topaz Rod in order to save energy on the Master Sword. But once the Muktarok re-entered its shark form, it was back to the Master Sword. Our attacks looked like they were doing better than against Goba, but I was not sure. At least Sidon was participating. The Master Sword lasted right up until we got the Muktarok to phase 2. Do you remember when I said an Opal weapon would have been a waste? Well, that was our answer to phase 2. It was the best at clearing the sludge, but the attack itself was weaker. Our Opal Scepter required 2 attacks to break the Muktarok's shark form. When the Muktarok now left its shark form, it bounced around like crazy. To cover for this, I used the Sapphire Rod. The attack was an AoE, which hit the Muktarok while it was in midair. A few hits could stun the Muktarok, causing it to fall straight down. Sidon and Yunobo attacking depended on if the ground was covered in sludge or not. Our Topaz Rod was doing good damage either way. We kept at this strategy until the Muktarok went down. This battle took us 9 minutes. All that remained was Gerudo Desert. Riju's power of lightning required us to shoot an arrow. I will not use the power to fight the Gibdo, but there are exceptions I have to make. The Gibdo nest have to be destroyed using Riju's lightning. The nest aren't enemies though, so this did not break the rules. While I was working on the quest, I remember I never unlocked the other Great Fairies, so I quickly went and unlocked the second one near Dueling Peaks. I got the Highland armor all up to tier 2, before going back to Gerudo Town. This gave us pretty good defense against the Queen Gibdo mini boss fight. I started off with the Ruby Spear. The fireballs were decent, and even went through Queen Gibdo's Dust Devils. The Master Sword's damage was almost non-existent. The Ruby Spear then broke after doing a quarter of the Queen Gibdo, causing us to craft a Topaz Rod mid-battle. The electric attack was slower than the fireball, but if we can land all 3, it did more damage. This damage allowed us to get Queen Gibdo with a half health, ending the fight. We can now earn the Lightning Temple, where we again have to battle Queen Gibdo. Having the main boss also be the mini boss makes this flow a little weird. We started the battle with the Ruby Rod, and the power and speed of our attacks actually managed to stun Queen Gibdo, allowing Riju and the other sages to attack. We got Queen Gibdo to phase 2 while it's still using the same weapon. We were doing that much damage. For phase 2, the Gibdo nest in the arena come to life, and the queen stays at a distance. For the ads, we switched to a Sapphire Rod. This kept him at bay and let us take out the nest. Once all the nests were gone, we switched to our Topaz Rod and finished off all the Gibdos that were still left on the field. With them all gone, Queen Gibdo returned back to the ground, and we returned back to the Ruby Rod. It finally broke when Queen Gibdo reached a third of her health. I switched to a Ruby Sword, since fire was the best element, but then that broke. We finished off Queen Gibdo with our Topaz Rod. That was a first try victory on Queen Gibdo. This battle took us 10 minutes. Following the revival of all the sages, the game wanted us to investigate Hyrule Castle, but I didn't want to fight Phantom Ganon. I tried to see if I could avoid the castle, but the rooms where we got the special lightning outfit were non-existent, and we couldn't investigate the ring ruins until we had proof Zelda was not the one saying to stay away from them. So, with my heart filled with disappointment, I entered Hyrule Castle and proceeded to get my butt kicked. Battle was technically 5v5, but we were not doing that much damage. With there being 5 enemies, Lock-On was not being our friend. In order to attack, the Phantom Ganons flew towards us and swung their sword. We had to run and avoid the swings. This gave us an opening to attack. Sometimes the Ganons would teleport over to us. We had to just keep running. The Ganons were doing around 3 hearts per hit. The sages, by the way, were doing very low damage. This was a battle of attrition. By the time we had 1 Ganon left, we broke 2 Ruby Rods. We were using a Ruby Halberd, but then that broke, causing us to finish phase 1 with the Sapphire Rod. For phase 2, one of the Ganons now spreads gloom across the arena. This is where the Sapphire Rod comes in. The AoE allowed us to hit the Ganon and reduce the gloom it spread across the field. After a few hits, that Ganon staggers for a little bit, and then teleports across the arena. If we could keep the gloom suppressed, we could attack the Ganon with our Fire Rod. As I mentioned earlier, our weapons were not doing that much damage. However, we still had the Master Sword. The range allowed us to attack from quite a far distance. The issue though was being locked in the throwing animation. Since we had to be at full health to use the energy ring, this required the shutdown on every single fruit, vegetable, and fish we had in order to keep our health at max. It took us forever just to get one Ganon down. However, from there, the dominoes just fell into place. After one Ganon fell, soon did the second and third, etc, etc. With only one Ganon left, it no longer tried to spread gloom, allowing us to switch to a sapphire sword we had reserved, and finish it off without worrying about our health. This battle took us 20 minutes. With this battle over, we can now return to Kakariko, and they finally let us investigate the ruins. This in turn led us to the special lighting puzzle in Faron Woods. We can now reach Thunderhead Isles and Dragonhead Island, where we could begin the quest towards the Spirit Temple. Using a glider, I needed to carry the head to a machine down to the surface, where it opened the hole into the depths. At the bottom was a construct factory, where we assembled a body from Mineru, the sage's spirit, to use. We now needed to make our way to the Spirit Temple, but it was just a bunch of monster fights, including a Hinox who we just ran from. Since the construct factory was full of puzzles, the Spirit Temple itself was just a boss fight. Phase 1 for the Sea's construct was a melee only fight. The only thing we could fuse to Mineru were spiked balls. This battle took me a couple tries to remember how it went, but I soon got a good groove on it. Block the Sea's construct's attacks to open it up for our attacks. 3 to 4 hits sent the construct flying into the electric fence surrounding the arena. 3 hits into the fence ended phase 1. For phase 2, the Sea's construct gave itself another set of arms, along with fans and other Zonite tech. The strat for this phase was to stay underneath, and wait for the Sea's construct to fall or dive to the surface. Once on the ground, we could continue the same song and dance as phase 1. The Sea's construct could drop his other weapons. That just led to me discovering that they didn't really do any damage, and we still needed to physically hit the Sea's construct no matter what. The Sea's construct does not get more defense for phase 2, so 3 more hits into the defense ends the battle. We already had the Master Sword, so I thankfully did not have to do the Deku Tree. This bit, it's time to make our way to Ganon. For the Lionel, I decided to run from it. I didn't want to use up my resources on a fight where I know I was not going to get anything in return. I tried to fight the Ice Lakes, but the Fire Rock could not reach them, so we just ran past them as well. This led us to a long staircase, where we just dropped down to the bottom. At the bottom was a black Lizalfos and a silver Lizalfos. To deal with them, I used the Sapphire Rod to freeze them, and then dropped them down into the pit in the next room. This allowed us to make a glider to go past the pit, where we were then met with a silver Moblin. It was relatively easy to run from, and thankfully did not follow us. This however led us to a silver Bokoblin who we had to defeat, but it was easy to stun lock with the Topaz Rod. After the Boko was a hallway of Gibdos, but they were no issue. This was the last monster encounter before the point of no return. Before Ganondorf, we had to face the Demon King's army. First was a battalion of Bokos. We started the battle by freezing a bunch of Bokos with the Sapphire Rod. We were not fighting this alone, but this made the battle more manageable. I used the Ruby Rod for some better DPS, but then I realized hitting a frozen opponents with the Topaz Rod made an AoE that hurt multiple enemies. We sadly already broke one Sapphire Rod in this battle, so I just used the Topaz and Ruby Rods to finish off the Bokos. The Zalfos easily fell victim to our second Sapphire Rod. The Gibdos were easy pickings with their Topaz Rod, and finally the Mamas were made trivial using the Sapphire Rod. All that was left was Demon King Ganondorf. Oh no. Yeah. We did not have the resources for this fight. For this battle, we started with the Topaz Rod. In order to get in a hit, we had to outrun Ganondorf and dodge his swing. The attacks were not doing that much damage, but they were at least better than the Sapphire Rod. The Ruby Rod was also doing better than the Sapphire Rod. After doing about 10% of Ganon's health, he started to switch weapons, starting with the club. Now, I could use the Master Sword to reflect Ganon's energy attacks, but I felt that one was a 50-50 on if the swing hit or not. To avoid Ganondorf's normal club swings, we just had to keep moving. Slowing down or stopping would lead us to getting hit. Ganon's club also has an AoE which we could dodge by using a paraglider. Being in the air caused Ganondorf to pull out his bow, but then he switched to his spear, the easiest of his weapons to dodge, in my opinion. By circling to the right, you could dodge all of Ganon's thrust. Keeping Ganon locked on and moving left and right was also the strat to dodging his spear charge. The issue I had to be careful of was that swinging too close could cause Ganon to flurry rush. My first fight against Ganondorf was in the archery run, so this was my first experience with him flurry rushing. I knew what to do to win this battle. My problem was that there were moments where I was caught off guard. Not to mention Ganon's phase 2 health bar. After phase 1, we were only left with 5 weapons for phase 2. I was debating whether I should or not, but I decided to retreat back to the surface and begin Koroxy hunting. While we were hunting, we of course had a blood moon, so all the monsters in the chasm would now respawn. I made sure to also collect Sundallions for anti-gloom food. The silver enemies and the Demon King's army took 4 weapons to get past, while phase 1 Ganon took 5. So I got Link up to 17 weapon slots, and they made enough sunny food for 8 meals. I also visited the demon statue to switch out 2 stamina vessels for heart containers. Time to retry Ganon. And with that, we have beaten Tears of the Kingdom with only magic. And yes, the Master Sword's energy attack does work on the Demon Dragon. This challenge took a lot out of me. For my next video, I'm doing something easier. Pokemon Violet with only Quaxley. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. See you all next time.